Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Book Chat with You. In this and almost every episode, I'd like to have a conversation with you about literature. And yeah, I think it's a very important thing. So, today we're looking at a Ernest Hemingway story. I was very pleasantly surprised to find this collection. I was looking for something else, and I found this collection I bought in China many years ago. This collection's called The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and I have it in English and in Chinese. Now looking at this, I wonder if I still have a certain David Sedaris short story collection. The first story in this collection might be the longest story in this collection, The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. I really like this story, but what I don't actually like is part of the writing style. Part of it could just embarrass me, but part of it, I think that Ernest Hemingway is said to be a bit clearer than he really is. I think Raymond Carver or John Cheever, if they were given this story to rewrite or given an outline to write, I think both would have done part of it a bit better. Yeah. So this story is about, we have three characters in the story. I mean, unless you include some of the aides, but I don't think we need to. So we have Francis Macomber. He is a rich American. The story takes place in 1936. So there are some subtleties of the story that maybe I wouldn't understand. And Francis Macomber's in his mid-30s, and he's rich. He is married to the very attractive Margot Macomber, and they are, slip my mind and maybe embarrassing myself, but they are in Africa hunting. Well, Francis is hunting, and he has brought his wife with him, and the professional hunter's name is Robert Wilson. So, of course, the story features a lot of the snappy dialogue that we are accustomed to. The story starts out with Francis Macomber being somewhat saved after a hunt. The hunt goes successful because Robert Wilson is a very good hunter. He does this professionally. He proclaims that he is expensive. Then Francis sort of loses himself. He sort of is unable to handle himself with composure because he's just so frightened of the lion. On the following day, they go after another lion, and Francis Macomber also does not do so well. Then that night, his wife cheats on him with the hunter. She decides to go that time. She views Robert Wilson a little bit attractive after the first, or what might have been the first hunt. And I mean, I forget the term. I just learned it. Media something, where a story sort of starts in the middle. And this kind of has that, right? Because there is some, exposition that could have been had before that kind of skips over and stuff. So his wife goes on the last hunt, and then I don't want to spoil the ending. If you type in the name of the story on a search engine, it will just spoil the ending for you. Yeah. So what is the story about? A lot of it is supposed to be about cowardice, or at least that's the theme that I think that we're supposed to perceive from it. And maybe in a modern lens, in a modern perspective, I'm not sure that is so much so. I mean, I've never gone hunting. Maybe at some point I would like to go hunting just to have that experience. I mean, if I'm willing to eat meat, I should be willing to one day, kill the animal for it. But also I hate long drives. And if I am in Las Vegas and I have to drive so far as to a place where one may go hunting, that would be a lot of driving, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know. It is not something that I am rushing to do. And I don't know what an American might be thinking to go all the way to Africa to do such a thing, but I don't know. Maybe it's the thrill. Maybe he was a good hunter in America. Maybe he was a good shooter in America. Maybe he's just rich and it's just nice to go out there, I've begun to think that sometimes when people do certain hobbies like that, it's not always about the actual activity, like kite flying, fishing, sailing. It's just that, when you go to the beach, you don't just stand there idle. Okay, well, like almost always, I'm going to go through the book, and I'm going to find some of the pages here that have sort of gotten my attention. So here on the first page, it says, "You've got your line," Robert Wilson said to him, "and a damned fine one too. Robert Wilson says this a few times. It's a sort of respect for the animal afterwards. A damned fine one. He is a good lion, isn't he? Macomber said. His wife looked at him now. She looked at him, both of these men, as if she'd never seen them before. So maybe she didn't care for Robert Wilson before. Maybe she had already cheated on her husband before, or maybe something's really is sparking within her that wasn't there before, but it mentions their somewhat quarrelsome relationship later on. She says, "You know you have a very red face, Mr. Wilson." She told him and smiled again. She says this twice throughout the story, red face. So this red face can be a few things, right? A blush response, or it's really hot outside, and some people turn red in the sun. My son, my youngest son, oh my gosh, the sun does not seem to bother him, and he would want to just run out in the sun without a care in the world, and he can turn quite red. Okay, Robert Wilson says nothing to it anyway. Okay, Macomber says, we might try. I won't forget what you did for me, though. Wilson says nothing, all nonsense, because, it's his job. So, Macomber's fear had taken over, and he didn't do so well for a moment. He says, Robert Wilson says, no, I'm a professional hunter. We never talk about our clients. You can be quite easy on that. It's supposed to be bad form to ask us not to talk, though. So I guess like this, and it's funny having moved just back to the U.S., there are many little pleasantries and such I don't understand. And I mean, I have to reconform and learn some little Americanisms. But just as living overseas, I had to learn it in China. And now that Francis Macomber is in Africa, he needs to learn what it's like to be around, British professional hunters or something. Okay, so Robert Wilson, he would eat then by himself, and he could read a book with his meals. He would eat them by themselves. Sorry, they would eat by themselves. He would see them through the safari on a very formal basis. Then he would read a book with his meals, and he'd still be drinking their whiskey. That was the phrase for when the safari went bad. So right now, Robert Wilson does not care for the Macombers. I'm sorry, Macomber said, and looked at him with his American face that would stay adolescent until it became middle-aged. Okay, next page. What else do I got? Okay, here on the next one. We'll put on another show for you, Francis Macomber said. You're not coming, Wilson said to Margot. So now Francis's wife, she wants to go, and the hunter does not want her to go. You're very mistaken, she told him, and I want so to see you perform again. You were very lovely this morning, and if blowing things' heads off is lovely. Here's to lunch, said Wilson. You're very merry, aren't you? Why not? I didn't come here to be dull. So she's kind of flirting. Okay, here. There was no one to tell he was afraid, nor to be afraid with him, lying alone. He did not know the Somali proverb that says a brave man is always afraid 3 times by a lion. When he first sees his track, when he first hears him roar, and when he first confronts him. Okay, they're in Somalia. Yeah, so just a lot of things he doesn't know. And it's interesting, no matter how long I can live in China, a 10-year-old will know things I'll never know. I mean, 30 years old, a 10-year-old knows more than me. When I'm 40, 50, and so on and so forth. That's the way it would always be. And at his short time, there are things he simply does not know. Okay, next page. His roaring carry this far? It sounds as if though he were right in this camp. Carries a hell of a long way, said Robert Wilson. It's strange the way it carries. Hope he's a shootable cap. The boys said there's a very big one about here. If I get a shot, where should I hit him? Macomber asks to stop him. In the shoulders, Wilson said. In the neck, if you can make it. Shoot for bone. Break him down. Okay, 2 pages over. Macomber shot again, and everyone saw the bullet throw a spout of dirt beyond the trotting line. He shot again, remembering to lower his aim, and then they all heard the bullet hit. So we get a little bit of that. Francis Macomber is not a great shot in this setting. And maybe inside of some modern way, we're supposed to feel something about that. But I don't know. I mean, how good a shot might you be inside of such circumstances? I don't know. What is Hemingway trying to say? Okay, so as I kind of done before in the past, I have this section that I had highlighted to share on the screen. If I'll ever do that method again, I don't know. I'm just r- editing these a bit for audio for now. So Macomber says, after having shot the lion and whatnot, "I don't want to go in there," said Macomber. "It was out before he knew he'd said it." "Neither do I," said Wilson very cheerfully. "Really no choice, though." After an afterthought, he glanced at Macomber and saw suddenly how he was trembling and the pitiful look on his face. "You don't have to go in, of course," he said. "That's why I'm hired for, you know. That's why I'm so expensive." "You mean you go in by yourself? Why not leave him there?" So there's a few concerns here, right? They shot the lion. He's injured. But in a sense, the injured lion is more dangerous than an uninjured lion. For one, he's going to be more aggressive. Other people aren't going to know. And yeah, so they have to deal with it. And they have some of the aides with them. I mean, I need to see that what they call him again. And the hunter would have to deal with it. Francis Macomber is terrified, as one reasonably could be and should be, and all that. So, reading on the next page a bit, Macomber said, "I'm just scared, you know. I'll go ahead when we go in," Wilson said, "with the Kongani tracking. You keep behind me and a little to one side. Chances are we'll hear him growl. If you see him, we'll both shoot. Don't worry about anything. I'll keep you backed up. As a matter of fact, you know, perhaps you'd better not go. It might be much better. Why don't you just go over and join Mem Sahib while I just get it over with?" "No, I want to go." So, it continues. In one spot I think was a bit awkward writing here is that they're in the car. Francis puts his hand on his wife's hand. She pulls away and then she kisses Robert Wilson. Now, I normally don't want to make this ever be my approach, but you know, I looked this up a little bit, and there's a consensus that Francis Macomber felt so defeated that he let his wife just kiss another man in front of him and did not protest. And I mean, it doesn't completely connect to me. It's really does not. It really does not. I mean, I can get it. I can see it a bit, but not completely. Okay, so so Francis Macomber could not sleep that night. He's having nightmares. Then that I'm going to read from here now. And maybe if I'll ever edit for screen again, I'll put this on the screen. It was now about 3 o'clock in the morning, and Francis Macomber, who had been asleep in a little while after he had stopped thinking about the lion, wakened and then slept again, woke suddenly, frightened in a dream of the bloody-headed lion standing over him, and listening while his head pounded, he realized that his wife was not in the other cot in the tent. He lay awake with the knowledge for 2 hours. So other caught. So that's how his wife may have gotten away with it. At the end of that time, his wife came in the tent, lifted her mosquito bar, and crawled cozily into bed. "Where have you been?" Macomber asked in the darkness. "Hello," she said. "Are you awake? Where have you been?" I just went to get out to get a breath of fresh air. Like hell you did." "What did you mean to say? What did you want to say, darling?" "Where have you been?" "Out to get a breath of air." "That's a new name for it. You are a bitch." "Well, you're a coward." "All right," he said. "What of it?" "Nothing as far as I'm concerned. But please, let's not talk, darling, because I'm very sleepy. I think you think I'll take anything. I know you will. Sweet. Okay. So, one more spot, and I'll kind of start to wrap it up after I read this next part a little bit. You sure you wouldn't like to stay in camp with her yourself and let me go out and hunt the buffalo?" Macomber said. So at this point, you know, one thing that Hemingway does do well here is there's a lot of unsaid stuff. And it's not impossible to read between the lines here. You know, yeah, I guess, you know, but then, you know, all three characters all kind of realize what's going on here. They're having breakfast, they're going to go out for another hunt, and you know, they're all kind of getting it. "Can't do that," said Wilson. "Wouldn't talk rot if I were you." "I'm not talking rot. I'm disgusted." Bad word, disgusted. Francis, will you please try to speak sensibly? His wife said, I mean, how do you tell somebody to speak sensibly after such a thing has kind of happened? How does one sort of go about it? So you contract a hunter out for a couple of days. Who knows how long one will be there? You know, you get some tent in the middle of nowhere, and then you're supposed to just be pleasant after one's wife cheated on him with the hunter and be cool with the hunter who slept with one's wife. I speak too damn sensibly, Macomber said. Did you ever eat such filthy food? Something wrong with the food? Asked Wilson quietly. No more than with everything else. I'd pull yourself together, Lady Buck, Wilson said very quietly. There's a boy waits at table and understands a little English. The hell with him. Wilson stood up and puffing his pipe strolled away, speaking a few words in Swahili to one of the gun bearers who was standing waiting for him. Macomber and his wife sat on the table. He was staring at his coffee cup. If you want to make a scene, I'll leave you, darling, Margot said quietly. No, you won't. You can try it and see. You won't leave me. No, she said. I won't leave you, and you'll behave yourself. Behave myself? That's a way to talk. Behave myself? Yes, behave yourself. Okay, well, the story's going to go on. They go for another hunt. Francis Macomber's braver, and he's really not listening to the rules. There's a rule to not shoot from the car. They kind of say it's a law. I thought it was about respect. I looked it up a little bit, but then, you keep reading the story and he says that there's a law for it. And then, but Francis Macomber, he's taking a bit of charge by himself. Then something very tragic happens to him. Now, the way I want to do these is you could always wrap up a story very quickly, but there's always a lot to discuss. If anything, what I like with Hemingway is this sharp dialogue back and forth. And maybe I've used a little bit of that with the argumentation of my own characters on my own writing. So that I really do appreciate. But some of the other prose and paragraphs where they say is clear, I don't know, tiny bit debatable with that. But with the ending, I mean, I could tell you the ending, but nevertheless, there's a bit with interpretation, which is partially why I have to redo the video. But, I see the ending now and I can have my own interpretation. So, what do you think happened? Why does what happened to Francis Macomber happen? Was it an accident? Was it intentional? What do you think? So, with all that said, I do thoroughly enjoy this story and would give so much to talk about. Cowardice, cheating, love, affairs, what does one do with their wealth and all that? A lot to discuss. So, with all that said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later. Bye.